April 30, 1967. The skies of Vietnam are a battleground between the best of the West and the best of the East. In a confused maneuver, a United States F-105 Thunderchief, flown by pilot Robert Abbot, is shot by a man who would go down in the history of the conflict. That F-105 was the first of 9 confirmed kills by Nguyen Van Coc, the deadliest pilot of the entire Vietnam War. To achieve this, he used an aircraft that was iconic in the Cold War, but which was about to never exist, the mythical Mig-21, the best interceptor of its generation. In this new video from Military Aviation, we want to tell you the turbulent history and the spectacular qualities of one of the many aerial masterpieces of the Soviet Union, and how they almost threw it away. The 1950s saw some of the most dramatic advances in aviation history. The Soviet Union was barely keeping up with the surge of spy planes, bombers, and fighters of all kinds put into service by the United States. That is why from Moscow they chose to focus on the development of interceptors, aircraft specifically designed to intercept and destroy enemies. To achieve this, these planes must be capable of spectacular speeds and loads of air-to-air weapons. In 1955, Nguyen produced 2 prototypes of this new supersonic interceptor, the Yi-2 and the Yi-4. The Yi was a simplification of the Russian word Единица, which means single unit, the standard classification for prototype models in the Soviet Union. The main difference was the design of its wings. The Yi-2 had swept wings while the Yi-4 featured new and futuristic delta wings. These aircraft carried out the flight simultaneously with the objective of establishing which of the 2 designs was the most suitable and had the best performance, although, at first, both prototypes were kept on par and the Nguyen designers found it difficult to make a decision. Ultimately, due to the great maneuverability, thrust, and increased fuel capacity, the Yi-4 was chosen to represent MiG. That prototype was a solid foundation containing virtually all the qualities that made the Mig-21 such a spectacular design. There was only one small drawback to overcome: the Russian government chose the prototypes of its main rival, Sukhoi Su-9. Nguyen did not plan to sit idly by, and in order to surpass the Su-9 and make it into production, the MiG team decided to change the focus of its design. It would no longer merely be a very fast interceptor, but would be an interceptor with the ability to engage in close air combat, that is, dogfights with U.S. aircraft. And to achieve this, the key piece was the new Tumansky Air-25 engine, which would give the new MiG enough thrust to reach speeds above Mach 2. Without losing that wonderful maneuverability that surprised the company's own engineers. The first incarnation was named Mig-21F and entered service in January 1959. As we told you, it was the first Soviet fighter to combine fighter and interceptor features in a single model. It was light and capable of Mach 2 speed with a less powerful engine, and was therefore comparable to the F-104 Starfighter and F-5 Freedom Fighter of the United States, and the Mirage 3 of France. Like many aircraft designed as interceptors, the Mig-21 had a short flight range. It initially presented a design problem where the center of gravity moved rearward once 2/3 of the fuel was consumed. This resulted in the aircraft becoming unstable and ended up giving it a flight time of just 45 minutes without auxiliary tanks. Over time, the low flight autonomy led to the development of the SMT modification, which implied an increase in the flight range of 250 kilometers through the incorporation of a dorsal tank. The fuselage of the Mig-21 is of the semi-monocoque type, with a width of 1.24 meters. A particular and highly innovative detail is that it is divided into 2 sections, the front, which is called F1, and the rear, or F2. These 2 sections are separated for changing the engine and for maintenance work. Up front are the wing, landing gear, cockpit, fuel tanks, and engine. At the rear are the tail, the exhaust pipe, the nozzle, the braking parachute and the aerodynamic keel. The aircraft's avionics are distributed between both sections. The first MiG-21s had only 30mm machine guns. Air-to-air missiles were one area in which the Soviets were somewhat behind the United States. But since history always works in mysterious ways, it was Uncle Sam who gave the Soviets the help they needed to produce their first truly efficient air-to-air missiles. During the Sino-Taiwan War in 1958, sabers in the hands of the Taiwan Air Force flew armed with the new American AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles. In a rare event, one of China's MiG-17s was hit by one of those missiles, but it did not explode. The Sidewinder became embedded in the fuselage and the MiG was able to land safely at a Chinese base. After a brief negotiation, the Soviet Union was able to get hold of that ill-fated missile, and through reverse engineering, they produced the Vimpel K-13. In the words of one of the Russian engineers who participated in that process, getting the Sidewinder was like a university offering us an advanced course in missile construction. This completely changed the landscape. Now the Russians and the Americans were in similar conditions with regard to weapons and available technology. A powerful and innovative craft was needed to tip the balance, and Nguyen hoped that the MiG-21 would be that missing piece. The Vietnam War was the testing ground for many of the most advanced US and Russian weapons, including the MiG-21, by then already the best aircraft available within the Soviet fleet. On the other side of the ring was the F-4 Phantom, which was a multi-role combat aircraft with the latest in detection technology and state-of-the-art avionics. The MiG-21 was an interceptor not all that varied in its uses, but what it did very well, and with the right pilot it was a deadly machine. Another key element to take into account is that the F-4 did not initially have internal cannons, since the United States firmly believed that the immediate future lay in missiles. In the case of close combat, the MiG-21 had a huge technical and weapons advantage. This resulted in numerous American air losses and humiliations in the early years of the Vietnam War. These failures generated a drastic change in strategy and the rise of institutions like Top Gun to modernize air combat. More than 11,000 units were produced, making the MiG-21 a resounding success around the world. Of course, this includes numerous upgrades, the most powerful and frequent being the MiG-21 BIS. The BIS contains a tank that increases the operational range, but also has third-generation avionics, an RSBN inertial navigation system, reconnaissance radar, and an RP-22M type fire control system, with a range of up to 30 kilometers. In all respects, it represents a significant evolution of the original fighter. The MiG-21 remained one of the best combat aircraft on the planet for decades. Slowly the F-15 and F-16 overtook it, although in the hands of expert pilots the Nguyen can be deadly even today. This is how we come to the end of this video. We hope you enjoyed discovering the qualities of this powerful aircraft. We'll meet in the next episode of Military Aviation.